Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here, and today I would like to discuss what disappointed us in Resident Evil 9. Now, of course, it is the latest, and for some, the greatest Resident Evil ever made, but it's definitely the latest one, for sure. And for me personally, it's definitely not the greatest, but everybody has their own opinions. Everybody likes different Resident Evil games. You know, you have the people that really like 5. That's like one of my least favorites. There are people that really like 6. I mention all the time, I like 6 way more than I like 5. There are people that I'm sure are out there that like the Survivor games. I have an attachment to the second one, but that's really about it. You know, I mean, heck, there's people that hate Revelations 2, which is absolutely insane because it's a game with Barry in it, and that's just rude. But, you know, everybody's different. People have their own opinions. But Resident Evil 9, of course, is the latest Resident Evil game, and while it's done some really good stuff, great stuff even, there's some stuff that I would consider like, wow, this was actually just great for Resident Evil. There are definitely some things that the game is lacking. And if you guys want to watch me go through the game, you definitely can. I got videos up on the channel. But also, check out the episode I did on the variation of monsters, like what monsters we wish we saw in RE9. That's definitely, you know, I'll do like a very small beat on that because I did a whole episode on it. But that's where we'll kick things off. Enemy variety, I think, was lacking. And it's really unfortunate because there's an opportunity with the way, obviously, I should say spoilers. I mean, that should be super obvious if I'm talking about what disappointed me in 9, but sometimes you just gotta say it. Spoilers for Resident Evil Requiem. Okay, so in the Raccoon City portion, that's where most of my concerns really come from, specifically for enemy variety. That's kind of like the main problem for most people, if we're being honest. Like the Raccoon City portion tends to be like the #1 thing people say, like, it lasted a little too long. It got, you know, it starts to drag on a little bit. And even I felt that when I was playing it. I was having a fun time with it, but the enemy variety was really the main problem. And it really sucks that the only sense of variety that you get from that portion of the game is, all right, you have, you know, well, I can't really say classic zombies because, you know, they're the new version of the zombies, which is another problem. We'll get to that, you know, like the story elements that are in the game, but are told in a confusing way. So a lot of people are confused about the story. We'll get to that part. But you have the Raccoon City zombies, and then the other zombies are the BSAA agents that have the machine guns. First off, I absolutely hate them because the machine guns take so much of your health and they can stun lock you, but also still, you know, accrue damage. I hate that. I absolutely despise them. Like, they suck so much. The actual living enemies, while tough, are not that bad, although the second time you fight them in the arc is absolutely horrible. Like, I died there so many times because I couldn't even go across the effing bridge. Because I'm like, why would they design this where it's an open bridge where the enemies can shoot up at you as you're walking towards them? I don't know who designed that and how that didn't work. Maybe it's because I wasn't dying as much, and you know, they've had like the adaptive difficulty forever, but maybe that's why. And I also played on like original mode, which technically, you know, I found out after I played like the original mode where you have to use ink ribbons and stuff, that is like the hard mode, and that's why Insanity is so crazy, because original mode actually is like hard mode. I couldn't tell that from playing the game, but I play all the Resident Evil games, so yeah, it's kind of a bias for me, really. But aside from that portion, I thought the living enemies were good. Like the first time you encounter them is not a bad portion. And then, you know, having to go across the bridge was the really dumb part that kept getting me killed, because I'm like, they're shooting me up as I'm walking over here. And then the zombie versions, the same thing. Like, they're just shooting me up as I'm trying to do other stuff, or I'll take a hit, or I'm literally fighting someone else and all they do is like one little spurt of ammo and it's like, oh, well, there goes like 75% of my health. Like, it's insane how much damage they were doing. But as a whole, enemy variety in that game is unfortunately lacking. Like, if all the zombies were like Grace's portion, I don't think it would be nearly as much of a problem, because, you know, they literally talk to you and they, you know, they have their personality, so they're doing different things. They of course can't really do that for Raccoon City, where, you know, I mean, they're like desecrated, you know, it's like there's not much there. So the lack of variety definitely comes from the fact that they weren't putting in other enemies. It was like, okay, well, have more spiders, you know, put the lickers out in the city or something like that, have them where they escape from the ark or something like that. The spiders for sure should have been in there way more. They probably could have had, you know, the dogs, once again, definitely should have been in there outside of just the set piece moment. So enemy variety for sure. And it really, like I said, you notice it way more during Leon's portion, because you just go through and fight the same enemies over and over again. And that's where it becomes a problem, where it's like, oh, you know, it's unfortunately the lack of variety becomes noticeable, specifically during like that portion where it's like, all right, zombies and then bulletproof zombies, which I often hate. Love it when they have the grenade though, because then you can just shoot them and be done with it. But other than that, I hate the BSAA zombie agents, those suck. But moving on from there, something else that I thought was an interesting and unfortunate disappointment for Resident Evil 9, and I'm gonna jump literally to the end and post-ending. The unlockables suck for this game. The guns are cool, but as a whole, I kind of hate the unlockables. Like, for one, and I've mentioned this before, I have to do a video on this, but they have like a very weird unlockable problem in modern Resident Evil games where they're just like, okay, here's like 5 costumes. 3 of them are in the deluxe edition. Like, as much as I love that, I'm always gonna get the deluxe edition because I want all the extra stuff. That's definitely a problem to only have like these couple of unlockable costumes. And then they don't even have the costumes where every fan on Earth is like, so we're getting an Outbreak Alyssa costume, right? And it's like, no. Well, that's disappointing. Okay, well, here's a bunch of guns. It's like, okay. Like, I think this is the first Resident Evil that's had, in a while, I should say, that's had so many guns that were just straight up not in the main campaign, literally at all. Like, we haven't had that in a hot minute. Like, RE4 has, the ones that it had from the original. So the Tommy gun and the hand cannon, sadly, they took out, the laser cannon. But even in the original, that was 3 guns. You got the hand cannon, the Tommy gun, and the laser cannon. And those were 3 guns that were not in the campaign, but you can unlock them. And it's like, okay, that's pretty cool. And obviously, your infinite rocket launcher, but there's a rocket launcher that you get to play with at least. RE7 has a couple of weird things. You can get like the buzzsaw as like the main thing. RE8, of course, basically has a straight up lightsaber as like the main weapon, but that's like 1 apiece. This game has like 5 or 6 different weapons that you don't even get in the campaign at all. You see 2 of them because one of them you get for Grace. That's the gun that she gets is the same one that Leon uses during the motorcycle segment. So it's like, okay, that's in the game. And then you basically get Xeno's gun. So you use one of them for like a hot minute, and then you see the other one in the campaign. But then there's like 5 other weapons. The Matilda's not in the game. The little short-nosed Magnum is not in the game. The carbine isn't in the game. Well, I guess technically you can count the the knife. Technically, the knife is already in the game. So I guess that's really only 3 now that I think about it, like the infinite versions of the guns. But you don't get to play with the other 2. So, Xeno's gun, and then I don't know if I even mentioned the carbine, but there's a decent chunk of weapons that are like, okay, I like this. This is actually kind of entertaining to have all these different weapons as brand new unlockables. You don't get the machine gun. You don't get, Xeno's Magnum or the other Magnum. You don't get the Matilda. You don't get the, I always call it a machine gun because it's like a machine pistol, but you get that in like a small set piece, but that's really it. Like, you barely get to experience that gun. So in a sense, you basically get 5 brand new weapons, but you can only use one of them for Grace. That's the craziest thing in the world to me. You get like all these new weapons, and they're like, well, Grace gets one of them, and that's it. And that's crazy to me. Like, the unlockables are ridiculous that they aren't tied to both characters, or at the very least, the ones that she should be able to use. Machine gun, well, once again, I always call it that, but the automatic pistol and both the Magnums she should be able to use because they already have it in the design of the game that she uses the Requiem, which when she first shoots it, she literally like shakes her hand and goes like, Jesus, which really screwed me over. Well, it didn't screw me over because I lived, but it scared the crap out of me because I shot it for the first time when I had like a couple of zombies lined up. And I was like, oh, there's a whole thing here when she does that. I was like, please, Grace, you need to hurry up because I'm about to get hit. So didn't see that coming when I first used that gun, but I thought that was kind of interesting. But I hate that the unlockables where it's like, it feels good to have them, where I'm like, oh, this is really cool. You unlock these weapons. And then it's like, yeah, most of them are only for Leon. Why can't she use the Matilda? It's literally a pistol. That makes no sense. She can't use a literal, like just a pistol? That makes no sense whatsoever. So I kind of hate the way that they have the unlockables where you get a decent amount, but most of them go to only to Leon. And then Grace is like, all right, she gets 1 weapon. You get the infinite knife, but what value is that when it's basically a defense weapon? If you have to use it in defense, then you have to kill that zombie to make sure you get it back. Otherwise, you pulled out an infinite knife and it literally just got lost like instantaneously because a zombie kept it. Like what in the world is the deal with that? So that's definitely a problem. And then of course, the new game plus. We'll see what happens with this DLC. Obviously, if I put this out super late, then hey, the DLC is out. But we'll see what happens with the DLC, and I'm excited for that, which I imagine it'll be out, like, by the time you guys hear this, I'm trying to put this out very soon, because they were just talking about it, and it's like, hey, you might want to play the game soon. So honestly, if I don't put this out, by this week, which is before the DLC, it's before it doesn't matter what the actual date is. Point is, if this comes out, pre-DLC, we're probably only like a few days away. And if the DLC is already out, I hope it's really amazing. I think it will be. I think it'll be fun based on the little teases that we've gotten where it's like, hey, basically all I've heard is it involves a lot of the action, and we'll see what the F that means. Like that's pretty much it. It's like, it's like the quote was like, make sure you sharpen your hatchet and stuff. So it's like, okay. And I believe you also have to have, I don't know if that was like an actual quote, but you know how, companies will do where they'll put headlines in and it's like, that's literally not what the person said. But one of the things I saw was that you do have to have a completed game save file, or maybe it was that you might want to have a complete save file before doing it. So I don't know if you have to or if it's encouraged, but they're definitely like, hey, it's something combat based. So I don't think it's going to be full on mercenaries, but it's going to be something combat based. I would love it, because we haven't had it since Resident Evil 6. I would love it if it was just a straight survival mode. If they did it, maybe with points, or had like multiple versions where it's like, hey, here's, I've said this forever. They need to just do mercenaries mode and have all the versions included. Like do mercenaries, whether it's single player, co-op, have the timed version, have the full on survival version like we had in RE6, and throw raid mode in there. Do some effing missions. I would love to see missions come back. And I would even like to see the special like bonus stuff that they have from RE8 Village. I don't know why I called it, they did the whole name like that. But I hated that mercenaries mode because it was like you have to go from, you have to be here to make the enemy spawn. Like it was really more of a speed run than like a survival strategy thing. Like the strategy was just know exactly where everyone spawns, and I kind of hate that. But the little bonuses where it's like, hey, you hit this orb and now you have, more defense, or your headshots do more damage, or you get heals from using the knife attack or something like that. Those are actually cool. So if they brought that in and to like a fun version of mercenaries or whatever this new mode is going to be, I wouldn't mind it. If they did a combination where it was like a full-on survival mode, but it had the little, maybe you kill a certain amount of enemies, then it's like, hey, now you can pick and choose what special ability you want, and they stack up like a roguelike situation. They could totally do that for Resident Evil, and I think it would be phenomenal. Like it, I think it has potential to do that. But either way, I'm sure that's going to be fun. Unfortunately for now, we got nothing. And not only nothing, but we got a crappy New Game Plus. I don't like the New Game Plus. Nobody does, apparently. Like, I think everyone is on the exact same page with that. And I don't think it's going to change, because that would be a huge shift in what they would end up having to do to swap around like the entire element of the game to be like, hey, instead of starting over and over again, you can start the game over and have all your stats. Like that's like behind the scenes, like obviously I don't design games, but I can tell you, I know enough about games to know that behind the scenes, that would be a lot of work to be like, all right, we're switching the entire way New Game Plus works. That would be a huge shift. So unfortunately, unless they really, really want to do it, I don't think that's going to happen. And I think we're kind of stuck with the version we have, which really sucks, because it's like, all right, I can get all these points, I can upgrade these weapons, and then I beat the game, and it's like, well, now I have to start over. Cool. Like you can't just have like all the weapons upgraded and just have fun with them or anything like that. It's like, nope, you pick the couple weapons you get through the campaign. Not that I think there's, admittedly, with the way they did it, they didn't make them that great anyway. Like aside from the sniper rifle, where it's like the classic thing, like, hey, you have the bolt action, you shoot one time, then you have to reload, and then you have the automatic one, or semi-automatic, that is slightly weaker, but faster fire rate. That's like the only one that really makes much of a difference. And then the shotgun is super clear, where it's just like, no, this shotgun's better. Like the one that you get in the box is just the best shotgun. Even though you get Kendo shotgun like later in the game, it's not better. Like the best one is still the one that you get in the box. Like overall, at least, it's still like the best one to get. And same with the machine guns, where it's like, all right, you get the one for free, or you can buy the one from the store. Like one is just better than the other, and both are garbage because they're submachine guns, and submachine guns are just trash. That's just gonna disappoint me no matter the Resident Evil game. Like submachine guns are garbage, unless the BSAA zombies use them, in which case they take off like 75% of your health by just casually just pulling the trigger and going up, and then they hit you 100 million effing times somehow. But submachine guns finally being valuable, but only to the enemy. That's a classic Resident Evil move. But that's where we are, for the unlockables. That's definitely like, that was a huge disappointment. Like just straight from the beginning. Like as soon as I beat, I was like, oh, this is how they do it. Like I had weapons that I unlocked, and then they even have the thing where if you get all the Mr. Raccoons, you get like a third layer of upgrades. And not every gun gets that, but I'm like, if you have it to the point where one of the unlockables is a whole new level of upgrading guns, And then New Game Plus is still like, yeah, but you have to start all over again. It's like, what? That's like almost counterintuitive. Like, you built two things that go against each other. It's like, I have extra incentive to play through the game and like upgrade these guns now, but then it's like, at the same time, I'm only gonna be able to use them for this one file, and that's it. Like, that blows. So unfortunately, I think that's where we are. Like I said, it would be like a straight up miracle if they put that much work into it. I would love it. They would be like, man, they're already doing great. You know, obviously RE9 is sold well. Pragmata is doing great. I'm really looking forward to Onimusha. I hope that does really well too. I hope we get an effing release date for that soon. But it's a heck of a year for Capcom, and also Street Fighter's doing well. I forgot about Street Fighter. It's not, a new character, but it's not a brand new game. But they're doing good across the board right now. But if they did that and they actually changed New Game Plus to be more like RE4, they would, like, people would scream it from the rooftops, like, holy crap, that's like, I'm just telling you, that's real work if they put the work into it. I think that's so much work that they will not be doing that, because that's an insane amount of work to literally shift around. I mean, there's literally like tutorials on it where it's like, hey, a pop-up shows up to tell you this is how New Game Plus works. There's a lot to take out of the game and rework to change it to make it like RE4. So that's what I'm saying. Like, if they actually did that, that would be worthy. I would do a whole video on that if they actually did that, because that's something that's a change beyond what most people would ever understand. Like, so many people would just be like, oh, they changed it, that's crazy. Like, no, that if they changed that would literally be like reworking the entire game. Like, there's so much to that is different. That's like, wow, that's a lot of work to take stuff out of the game and rework it to make it more like RE4 remake, or just RE4 in general. But I would love it if they did. Like I said, I'd make a whole episode on that alone, because that would be worth talking about, because nobody does that sort of stuff. But sadly, that's a lot of work that I don't think they're gonna put in for a game that's already, doing quite well. And then it's about to get DLC, and I think people are gonna be fine. So unfortunately, I think we're just stuck with the mode that we have. I don't know if anyone in the modding community is gonna figure that out at some point. That would actually be pretty sick. But definitely one of my biggest disappointments is, like, even if I didn't have the other weapons, like the unlockable ones, like I don't need like the Matilda or the carbine and stuff like that, or the special magnums. If I had New Game Plus and I could just keep everything that I had, I'd have a great time. It's like, okay, I upgraded my weapons, let me go through and just wipe out a bunch of enemies. I'm fine doing the classic RE4 thing, like, hey, New Game Plus, but if you start professional, it's like starting all over again. I'm perfectly fine with that. Like, yeah, I miss having my weapons my second playthrough, but that's fine. Odds are that would be my third playthrough anyway. Like, I normally like to do New Game Plus and just go through and have like a fun run, and then it's like, okay, now I'll start all over again on professional, and then do whatever I need to do to get whatever bonuses that come from that mode. So it's really unfortunate to me personally, where I'm just like, it's just not as fun. So that's just how I feel about it. So that's one of the biggest disappointments, because it does impact replay value. Everyone has said the exact same thing. Like, it makes you not really want to go through it, because it's like, all right, well, yeah, I can play around with these guns, but I would love to just be able to upgrade and then be like, okay, I kind of like this. What about this combination? You have like a weaker version of like one of the machine guns, but the stronger version of a shotgun and stuff. Like, just mix and matching combinations, plus the DLC, or not DLC, but the unlockable weapons as well. And it's just like, come on. Like, it's just crazy to me. So that's a huge disappointment. But with that, we have to talk about the story. You can play through, lack of variety. The combat might not be as good, which is not. The combat in 4 is like a million times better to me. I feel like in RE9, he's super, like, I can't say super slow, but he's a lot slower. I actually kind of hate it. Like, it was something that it legit, it took me till after I beat the game to realize exactly what it was that I didn't like. And it was the fact that the combat is so much slower. But we'll do that in a minute, because I just want to talk about the story. The story itself, I don't have a problem with. It's how they told the story that ends up being confusing, because there are so many people that are like, what is this? What is that? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Do we believe this? The Spencer thing, I think, is up for debate, whereas, like, I even mentioned before, like, okay, he could have turned a new leaf, but at the same time, and a lot of people said this, like, he also had absolute control over that, and it was more like if he wanted to just do good, he could have just released it. And I said before, like, he found a way to contact everybody on planet Earth, but he couldn't contact Chris or Jill or Claire or Leon or any of the main characters. He just had no way of getting in touch with any of those people to release the ultimate antivirus but he just really wanted to adopt this kid and be like, man, I'm so hopeful. It was like, he could have done more. If he really cared, he literally could have just told Alyssa, I kind of trust you. I mean, he trusted her enough to send a baby her way. It was like, I trust you enough. Like, here's all the info. He could have done that when he sent Grace, which I guess in a sense he sort of did, because it seemed like she did know, like at least a little bit, because that's why, you know, she was always on the run. So she knew a little bit, but it was like, you couldn't contact anybody else that would have had the capability of just kind of hopping on down to the Ark and unleashing it themselves, huh? That's a little weird. But once again, that goes into the story. There are things that are kind of left up to interpretation where they'll say something, but then you have a million questions behind it. And then there's also other things where it's like, the answer is fully in the video game, but it's told in such a confusing way that people are still wondering, hey, how come Grace didn't get turned into a zombie? Like, what's up with that? Oh, it's the Dexafil thing. Like, it's not. People don't turn into zombies in this game when they get bit. That's the answer. They show that. Like, no one gets turned into a zombie unless they're shot. That's just how it goes. Like, you have to specifically be infected with the virus to turn into a zombie. If that wasn't the case, the guy that gets killed in the, I was gonna say in the dark room, but in the room with Emily, when you go in there, there's just a dead dude on the floor. Gideon killed him, by the way, because they don't answer that. I finally figured that out myself. I was like, oh, he cut his neck. Because the part where he like cuts Leon's neck with the scalpel, that's what he did to the guy. He killed him. He cut his throat. That's why that guy was dead. And it was like, oh, it looked like he got scratched or whatever. Like, you know, his throat was slit. That was Gideon. Gideon did that because he used the scalpel on him. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me personally, because I'm like, it's still a little confusing. Like, well, what's the deal with, like, why did that happen? And like, there's still a lot of questions to it. Like, why? But that's what happened. Gideon was the one that killed him. And granted, I could be wrong. That could technically just be speculation. That's just what makes the most sense, because they specifically say like, oh, it's like his throat was slit or like he was cut or whatever. But he also never turns into a zombie. I was kind of waiting for that the whole way through. He literally never turns into a zombie. No matter how many times you go in there, at least not that I've seen, he does not turn into a blisterhead or anything like that. And that's because he was not infected. He was killed, but he wasn't actually turned into a zombie. So that is why, you know, the answer's in the game. They just make it really weird. So that's one of those weird things where it's like, oh, that makes no sense. Of course, a buttload of people were super confused with the Grace Emily connection, and then, you know, you got Chloe in the flashback cutscene where it's like, okay, so you're you know, a lot of people thought like, oh, you're playing as Grace. I think I caught it as soon as they did it, because I'm like, oh, it's before, you know, the games even started. I was like, oh, this can't possibly be Grace, or maybe I didn't figure that out until after. But that portion confused a lot of people where it's like, you know, they thought it was her being, you know, much younger, but that's just like a part of the story of the game where even the villains don't know the actual truth. I find it weird that even with the dialogue that they were like, yeah, they were clones, like the way they lead into that is what makes it confusing. I think they maybe should have just rewritten it a little bit, because I think that's the thing that gets most people, because they specifically have Zeno being like, yeah, all of these clones were based off of you. And then he does a flashback to 1990, but it's like, you should know for a fact that she didn't exist during that time. Like, even if there are clones back and forth, like they maybe should have thrown in like another thing, a dialogue or something. But it's like, so is she one of the lab-grown kids? Because he says they're all based off of you, but that doesn't make any sense. But he should also know that if he has this footage, like that they can't possibly all have been based on her. And it was just the way the dialogue was done that made it sound kind of weird. But one of those little confusing things. The zombies in Raccoon City, where people are like, how are these zombies doing what the other zombies were doing, where, you know, they're grabbing rebar and stuff like that, despite the fact that they all look the same. That's more of a design issue that I had, where it's like, oh, they all are just, you know, scraggly haired, emaciated zombies, which they'd all be emaciated, but I'm like, they could have done different hairstyles or something. Like, you know, you can know, you know, it's a woman because she's wearing a gray dress. Like, that was it. Like, you guys couldn't have thrown in like like, you know what would have been super sick? If they threw in the classic zombies from RE2 and 3, where it was like, hey, this cop, or not this cop, but this zombie is dressed like a cop. Or this zombie, which I know they kind of kept that for the RPD, but even then they did, what, 2 zombies? They could have done that around the city. But they also could have done a super classic callback to RE2, because RE2 is the first, you know, that's where they have like the first female zombie, because in RE1, they're all male zombies basically. And they could have had the zombie where she comes in with the shorts. I forgot her name, like the community gave her a name, but it's like, she's like the first female zombie. Like, she's like fairly popular in the community because it's like, hey, it's like a female zombie. She's got like short shorts and like a tank top, or not a tank top, but I think she has like midriff. yeah, like a midriff shirt. And it's like, she's popular. They could have done that, even with the same, scraggly hair, but just the clothes I felt could have been different. That's, like a minor thing, but that's definitely something I noticed. I was like, either they're shirtless dudes in pants throwing rebar at me, or it's a woman that looks exactly like all the other zombies. Like the zombies looking the same, I can understand. Although they didn't all need to have the same hairstyle. That was something that, I don't think I called it out, but I remember the first time I saw the woman in the dress, I was like, huh, she looks exactly like all the other guys I just fought. Because you do it in that portion where you fight a bunch of zombies for the first time. They all kind of look the same. When you really look at it, they all have like the same scraggly hair. Some will have pants and some won't. And that's really it. Like, or some will have shirts and some won't, I think is the real difference. And then it was like, oh, that's a woman because she's in a gray dress. Oh, here's another female zombie. I know it's a female zombie because she's in another gray dress that looks exactly the same. Like they didn't even just swap any sort of colors. Like I said, minor visual thing, but it's definitely something, not everyone's gonna notice that, but it was something I noticed. It was, like I said, it was literally when the woman came out and I was like, she just looks like the dudes and it's just a gray dress. And that's literally it, like exact same hair and everything. I was like, couldn't like just go bald or slight variations. They don't have like cracked skulls or anything like that. Like just even the visuals of how they look messed up doesn't apply. They're all just gray and stuff, much like the city itself. Also, if you have any interest in making Raccoon City look better, the apocalypse filter is where it's at. That little hint of blue changes the whole thing. Like it looks like it's crazy. It's a slight change, but I'm telling you, it is a huge difference. So if you're ever playing the game, at the very least, when you get to Raccoon City, just throw on that apocalypse filter, and I'm telling you, it gives this a little bit of life. Like it gives it like that little hint of blue almost makes it seem more like it's dawn. Like you got there like super early in the morning, and it's like just slightly blue. So that's what it kind of looks like if you do the apocalypse filter. So just to throw that out there, if you've never used the filters, I'm telling you, that filter actually kind of saves that entire area. Like it looks a million times better if you do that specific area with that filter. So just to throw that out there. But visually, that's definitely something that I noticed. And I know that was a tangent off of the story once again, but just something worth mentioning. But story-wise, once again, lots of questions keep coming up where the answers are technically in the game. There's even stuff about Grace's, I don't know if they don't say CEO, I assume, her boss, yeah, just her boss in the FBI, where there's a whole thing when you're in that final room where she's looking at all the monitors and stuff. There's a monitor that has a bunch of information on it that's not a file or anything. Like I was watching a YouTube video where one of the guys actually brought it up. Shout out to Let's Talk Resident Evil. It was that channel. And they were having a conversation about the game. It's highs and lows. And one of the guys brought it up was like, yeah, this is on one of the TVs. Like somebody just saw, like it has like a whole timeline of information. Like, hey, try to manipulate this. We'll do this thing and get her here. We'll plant this by, like, it was literally like everything that happened in the game on an actual timeline as a part of their plan. Like we'll plant the body here and, drag her, make her come to the hotel. So it kind of, in that portion of the game that you won't ever know that even exists, they kind of imply that there was someone, if it wasn't her boss directly, there was someone maybe even above him that had connections to Gideon where they're like, hey, we want to make sure we get her, so tell her boss to go here. That's kind of been like the running joke, like why did he send her out with no help and stuff like that. It's kind of implied in a thing that you can't possibly see unless somebody told you it exists. But it is kind of somewhat implied that they did actually do something and they have a tiny speck of control over the FBI, which makes perfect sense. They're the connections. They can have control literally anywhere because it's vague. That's how that works. You can't say it's a retcon. It was just vague and you didn't know that. So that's how they do all that, blowing up Raccoon City and everything. But that I thought was a very interesting revelation where it's like, oh, that's something people always joke about, but it's in the game technically. They just don't really show it for some odd reason. And I think it would have been great to be like, oh, so maybe it was her boss. Maybe he wasn't on it the whole time. Or maybe not, like I said, someone even above him told him to do it. But either way, it's kind of out there in the game and you just can't see it. Weird stuff like that, or just questions that people have. Is Spencer really good? Did he actually, turn a new leaf? Stuff like that. So story-wise, it's very weird in a multitude of ways because there are things that people question even after the game is done. There are things that have answers that are just not told well enough that people still question. Like I said, like, why isn't Grace infected? It's literally just in the game. Like, no one gets infected from a bite in this game at all. Like, the entire, like, they prove it in the game. Like, people, It's a different form of the virus. Like, it's totally different. So they prove it in the game. It's just not explicitly told. Like, you kind of just have to be like, oh, that, it's like people picking the bad ending. Like, you kind of have to pay attention to just some of the minute things, but they can be so minute that it's like, you probably should have done it and made a very conscious effort, especially with the bite. That, I would say, is something that they probably should have done as like an explicit thing. Like, hey, you cannot turn just because you got bit. You can't turn just because you died. I mean, in classic Resident Evil, even people that weren't bit by zombies turn in the zombies. It's kind of like The Walking Dead. Like, if you die, you just turn. So they don't even have that. Like, that was probably the clearest example, like the dude being killed in Grace's or Emily's room, and then he never comes back. Like, he wasn't killed by a zombie. He was straight up just murdered, and it's not in the air. It's not really airborne like that. So something that they probably could have explained a bit better, specifically considering they made a point to have a character like bit in game, and then it's kind of just like, so is she immune? Like, there's so many theories and something. It's like, no, you just can't get infected. Like, it's in the game. Like, you don't get infected from being bit. That's not this version of the virus. It doesn't work like that. But that's not what we've known for like 30 effing years. So I think it makes sense that people are still a little confused by that and making all these theories. And it's like, yeah, they probably should have just straight up told people somewhere in a file or something to be like, hey, you just straight up cannot get infected unless you are specifically hit with the actual virus. Like, it has to be implanted in you, either through like the tiny little dart gun like Gideon, which is bow bow bow, or someone infecting you in another way. But it has to be very specific. And even then, it's super weird because they do have the portion where Grace falls into the blood, and I think there's somewhere in the game where they talk about that being a potential issue. So that brings up more questions. So there's some things that they do that are just like, all right, you need like some definitive stuff. So we'll see what happens. Maybe, I doubt the DLC will do anything with that, even the story stuff, but we'll see. Maybe they'll be like, okay, we kind of should have answered this, or maybe we should have made this super explicit. They're gonna have somebody scream like, we can't get infected if we're bitten. Like, they're gonna do something silly like that and be like, oh, there's the answers that are technically in the game, but still confuse people. So maybe they'll do that with the DLC and have like some random notes to be like, this is exactly what's happening, everybody, because so many people are confused. Like I said, the amount of theory videos that I've seen are like insane, including the stuff like, why are there zombies that are acting like that? Or why are there even zombies at all in Raccoon City? Stuff like that. It's like, it's all in the game. It's all in the game. But they didn't tell it the best way that they probably should have. So that is definitely something I qualify as a disappointing element of RE9, aside from all the other little things that I've referenced. But despite it being really fun, and it is, I can definitely still recognize like some of the disappointments that it has. For some people, this isn't a me thing, but for some people, they say like the nostalgia of it is a disappointment, like member berries and stuff like that. I've always thought that was an interesting argument, because I think it's really stupid when people say that, because I'm like, the game has a bunch of references, don't get me wrong. Like, people point out literally like the first Resident Evil 1 reference during the scene where the woman opens the door to talk to Leon before she gets impaled, 17 years later, and he just stood there. Still crazy. Like, that's what we need an explanation for. Like, Leon, what were you doing? Like, he was just checking it out, like, dang, he was about to shish kebab her. I guess, let me see. Crazy. Absolutely insane. He just stood there. But buttload of references in the game. Tons of things very overt, some things not overt. They have like the statue from RE1. They have literally like the first file you open. I think if you open like the case file that Grace has in the beginning of the game, it literally starts on September 28th, which is the opening date to Resident Evil 3. And that's a reference I feel like a lot of people don't mention in their videos, where they're like, all these, all the references to Resident Evil. Nobody ever talks about that file. Like, you open the file and the first thing it says is September 28th. And I'm like, that's super cool. So there's a lot of references in the game, but people talk about the RPD stuff and it's like, oh, it's just like member berries. I'm like, you're there for 10 minutes. Like, how can you say a portion that's so small is just like, oh, they just throw all these member berries at you? It's just nostalgia. I'm like, you're barely there for like 15 minutes. Like, I always thought that was a weird complaint that people had, where they act like you're just stuck. Like, people act like you were there for 3 hours and it was just playing Resident Evil 2 again. I'm like, they barely do anything with that. But that's a personal thing. I've always thought that was weird. Like, the first time I heard it, I was like, they barely even do anything. Like, yeah, they have Mr. X, which is a callback to RE2, of course, because Leon is the one that mostly fights Mr. X, especially if you're doing like the original version. But even in the remake, that was one of the few things they kept, where if you do the B campaign, he gets he gets a super tyrant fight. But it's like, okay, that's a specific connection to Leon. Like, that's why they did the RPD thing, where it was like, yeah, here's like, honestly, like the most minute reference. Yeah, you go to the actual stars area, it's literally just showing you an area. Like that barely counts as like member berries. That's just like, yeah, you go to the room because it's the stars. Like if there's one single room that you should go to in the RPD that's destroyed, it's the stars office. But, you know, that's really it. And then, you know, they put the Rebecca picture and stuff in there for the references for that. And it's like, that's such a small portion of the game that I always thought it was so weird. Like, you know, and people specifically mention like, hey, once you go to the RPD, it's just like member berries. I'm like, you're there for 15 minutes and you do one like boss battle that references the same character. You know, it's an updated model, but like they reference that character in that battle of Leon going through that experience for the first time. And it's like, that's super cool. And it's literally like the only thing that they do. Other than that, you're just in the you're just in an old building, and that's really it. But once again, I thought that was super weird. I'm like, how is it member berries to have like a small portion of this game that's full of references, even if they aren't overt? That's where the overt references are, and that's literally it. And I like I said, personal opinion, I always think that's super weird when people have that complaint, and it's like, oh, they just throw member berries at you, and I'm like, you can go through the RPD, especially if you're not doing like Barry's little side puzzle. You can literally go through the RPD in like 10 minutes tops. Like gameplay wise, like if you're counting cutscenes, heck, even counting cutscenes, it's probably what, 10 minutes tops, and then technically you're outside. Like even if you count fighting Mr. X as a part of it, maybe 15 to 20 minutes in total. And that's, you know, technically not in the RPD, but if you count fighting him, you know, going through Kendall's gun shop and everything, if you want to count all of that right up until you actually hit the orphanage, that's legit only like 20 minutes long. And that's if you do all the extra stuff, and it takes you forever. It took me forever to figure out how to do that puzzle because I didn't realize you had to activate something in order to get the key to show up. And then I didn't realize what was happening because I jumped on the little canister, or not the canister, but like the pallet that they had to stand next to the TV. I did that like the first time I walked into the room, but you have to actually get the scavenger hunt thing to start before that activates. So I didn't know that it was there. And so I did it once when I like first went to the RPD, and I forgot I stood on it like, you know, like 40 minutes later because, you know, I was going through the orphanage and all that stuff. And I forgot that I did that. And so I'm like, I thought it was on the TV, and I was so confused. So I was there forever. But that portion is so tiny to me that it blows my mind when people complain about it the way that they do. I'm like, that's shocking to me. But I understand, you know, for some people that hits more than others, so that counts as a disappointment. But like I said, for me, I'm like, yeah, they have references to the portion where you're actually literally redoing the opening to Resident Evil 2. Like, they have you go down the same alleyway and everything, and it's like, okay, like, yeah, that was kind of the point, to have like this very specific portion that is full of memories. If anything, they needed more stuff. Like the actual like city portion should have had 1,000,000 times more references instead of just one Stagla gas station that wasn't even in the actual, like, even in the wasn't even in the actual remake of RE3, because, you know, that game had nothing. But that does lead to my final disappointment, and I'll end this out here. Jill should have been in the game. Plain and simple. Jill Valentine should have been in the game. I'm not saying replace Leon. I've said this a couple of times, but you don't have to replace Leon, but you need it more than Leon. Like, Leon's the poster boy, but he's not even remotely close to being as important to all of Raccoon City as Jill is. And I say Jill specifically because she got RE3. She's the character that went through the city. That's why it makes the most sense that it should have been Jill, even if you go to the RPD, which even that is like, okay, they kind of screwed that up because in the remake, they make it Carlos. Because in the original, she goes to the RPD. So even then, if they were going off the original, you could still be like, well, she was there. But even if you don't play as her in the RPD, you still have the actual city portion. Should have been Jill. And if anything, RE9 would have made up for how much they screwed us over with RE3. And I still wouldn't say that it does. Like, you go through a decent little bit of Raccoon City, but it's not like it's anything special. It's not like it's like, hey, here's the clock tower, because we didn't give you guys that. Here's the dead factory, which was something I thought they could have done for sure. I was like, what if they redid one of the facilities, specifically, like if you went to the RPD nest, which was, yeah, nest 1, I guess. But if you went to that facility and then it was destroyed and they called that one the dead factory, that would have been pretty sick. I would have liked the reference. But even then, That would have been yet another reason to be like, well, Jill should have been here if you're going to call it the Dead Factory, if you're going to have a nemesis show up, if you're literally going to do the same fight, which a lot of people pointed out. I went through the fight so effing fast, I was like, oh, okay. Same with the Hunk fight. The boss battles were very, I would say, like, minuscule. That goes into another element of me being like, I didn't think the game was even remotely close to difficult. I fought Hunk, and I was like, oh, and he's dead now. Like, it was so fast to me, I was like, that was not much of a fight. But Jill should have been in the game. Like, there's so much they could have done with dialogue. Also should have more dialogue. Like, even between Leon and Sherry, there should have been way more dialogue during the RPD portion. Like, where he's just walking around in silence. They literally should have had like a buttload of just random lines where they just talk about the past. That would have been so cool. Would have been also great if they effing mentioned Claire, because that's ridiculous. But genuinely, that was one of those things where I was like, there should have been way more dialogue of just the characters' emotions and everything that they're actually going through. But they have like one small moment, and then that's literally it. They have one conversation that entire time, and then they only talk if he picks up another piece, and that's it. And I'm like, that's weird. There should have been like way more conversation. Like every little thing should have been like, man, this thing happened or that thing happened. Not that Leon could reference much, but once again, if they had Jill, she could have, whoever she would have been talking to, if it was Sherry or not, she could have been like, man, I went to this gas station. I used to go to this theater. I was in this hotel before. Like, there's so many things that she could have done in her life that could have been referenced in 9. And that's just crazy to me. But, you know, that was just a huge part of why I'm like, that makes no sense. Like, Jill was the person that deserved to be in 9 more than anyone else. I mean, you can't tell me that she doesn't regret what happened to the city. It blew up and she lived there. Leon visited for a day and then he left. He survived, which is obviously why he left. But still, he was there for one day. She lived there. He'd never even been to the STARS office outside of what we played to make him go into the STARS office. He didn't know any of those people. So, huge thing for me where I'm like, it should have been Jill. Definitely should have been Jill. But that's where I'll end things, especially because I finally effing made it to work. This whole time, I've been stuck in morning traffic. I effing hate traffic. I'm so tired of it. I'm so tired of it. But that's a disappointment in real life. But I want to know your disappointments in Resident Evil 9. There's a lot to be said about the game that's really fun. Like I said, I had a fun time with it. Not as much as RE4. The combat I just don't think is as fun. It's slower. That's my main thing. Like, I hate the hatchet thing. It's always like a 2-piece movement where he hits it in, then he has to pull it out, and it's just slower. Like, I miss the knife just being like, boom, you just stab them and you keep going. I wish that there were more stuns where you just kick. Like, I'd be fine if the enemies lived longer and it wasn't always like the hatchet kill. If I could just do like a nice spin kick and then I'm right back to shooting. But everything just feels, it's just slow. It is factually slower. Like, if you play it, you just know, unfortunately, once you notice it, you notice it. So sorry if I just threw that out there and then it's like, dang, it is slower. Sorry if I made you realize that, but it's just slower and I don't like it as much. Like I said, it took me to, after beating the game, to even think about it, to be like, that's why I didn't like the combat that much. It was slower. Like, every hatchet hit is like, boom, it's in, and then you have another beat where it pulls it out, whether it's the straight down where he pulls it up. If he hits him in the neck, it stops in the neck, and then he pulls it off. I also just saw a video where the second hatchet hit literally does no damage. That's crazy. I wish I knew the video so I could tell you guys to watch it. But they talked about, like, they had a mod to show like how much damage and health everything has. And the second hit where it's like, you know, it does like the little boom, boom. That second hit literally does no damage. It's just for show. And it's like, that right there is just like, if you're gonna have it for show, don't. Have it do damage or just take it out and then just make the character a little bit faster. I know he's older, but that doesn't mean he couldn't have just more melee moves or different melee moves at least. I wish I could do more of the kicks. Like, I feel like there's so many times I thought for sure, I'm like, okay, kick time. And it's like, nope, hatchet. And I was like, oh. And then you get the slow 2 beat and it's like, yeah, I killed the enemy. I got the 2 hits in, but I kind of wanted to just do like a cool boom, hit him with a drop kick, and then I'm shooting the other dudes and stuff. So it just always felt a lot slower. Like, there's a lot of times where I was going in expecting a kick or just like a spin kick or something, and it was like, no, just kill him. I was like, oh, okay, all right then. But that's just a me thing. Like I said, I want to know what disappointed you guys in RE9, and what are you looking forward to for the DLC if it's not out? If it is already out, what do you think of the DLC? Because I'll probably have a whole video on that too. But either way, want to know your thoughts on all things good and bad, specifically the disappointing of Resident Evil 9. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.